Hello, everyone. We are going to be focusing today on mortgages, and that is the only thing this section is about, which again, we talked about mortgages are another word for a home loan. So, a homeowner's mortgage is a long-term loan in which the property is pledged as security for payment of the difference between the down payment and the sale price. And we've talked about the two popular types of mortgages. And so this part is more of a review, but a conventional loan, I was calling those fixed rate loans because the interest rate is fixed for the duration of a loan. With a mortgage, we tend to call those conventional loans. And then we had the adjustable rate loan, which is interest rate may change every period as specified in the loan. And we looked at an example with that in the previous video when we were talking about installment loans. You also have closing costs when you buy a house. So typically, you're going to put a down payment on a house. What that down payment is depends on, a lot of times, the loan, the bank, depending on the type of loan. So you could have a loan where they're going to tell you need to put 10% down, maybe 20% down, maybe 3.5% down if you have an FHA type of mortgage. It depends on, yes, what the bank is asking for and what you have available. And that will also help determine what type of loan you're going to get. Now, closing costs, those are always paid when you close on a home. So when you close on that mortgage, you will have closing costs. There are various fees in the closing costs, which we don't get into in this course. But part of your closing costs could be points, which I did discuss in a couple videos. One video, I can't remember which one, but it was one of our loan videos. But the interest is prepaid by the buyer, which can help reduce your interest rate. Not everyone chooses to pay points, and you won't always have it as an option. But when you pay points, it's typically 1% of the loan amount, not the house amount. It's the loan amount. So you put a down payment, right, on the house, and then whatever's left over, that is the mortgage, that is the loan amount. If you choose to reduce your interest rate by purchasing points, you will take 1% for each point of that loan amount. All right, that's just some information, but we're going to work on an entire problem here for this video. And here's our example. Patricia and Marshall wish to purchase a house selling for $249,000. They plan to obtain a loan from their bank. The bank requires 15% down payment payable to the seller and a payment of 2 points payable to the bank at the time of closing. So this is the information we're given for the purchasing of this house. Part A says, well, then what is their down payment? Their down payment is 15% of what they're buying. So let me just put that down here. It's 15% of the purchase price of the house. And remember, when we're doing a calculation, so of always means times, just remember that. 15%, but remember, we got to turn that into a decimal. And then that's going to be times the purchase price. So take 15% of the purchase price, and we end up with $37,350. That is how much they're going to put down on the house. So the next question says, then determine the amount of their mortgage, meaning they're putting that down payment. How much are they borrowing? What is their loan amount going to be? So we're going to take the purchase price and minus the down payment. And this will tell us how much they need to borrow from the bank to purchase this house. So that's going to be $211,650. Okay, that is the loan amount, the amount of the mortgage. Part C, determine the cost of the 2 points. Go back up here to the problem and find it here. Let me just switch my colors. Here it is. You're paying 2 points. And remember what we talked about above in the, actually, I'll just scroll up here real quick. Right here. 1 point is equal to 1% of the loan amount. We have 2 points. That's going to be 2% of the loan amount. So 2% of the $211,650. Turn to a decimal and multiply. And the amount is what they're going to pay for those 2 points, which is going to lower their interest rate. $4,233 is the cost of 2 points for this particular loan. Now let's just talk about the formula to find the payment. If you want to find out the payment, what is their mortgage payment? So we know how much they're borrowing, but how much are they going to pay every month for that loan? This particular formula is the same formula we saw in the installment loans, which is the same formula that is used with the website we've been using, the financial calculator at calculator.net. We are going to continue to use that. So I'm going to go down here, part D. They want a 30-year mortgage. We have the amount that we just figured out. If the interest rate is 7%, determine the total monthly mortgage payment. So let's go back to our calculator and let's change our loan amount here. They are going to be doing $211,000 and $650. There we go. That's the loan amount. Remember, it's not the purchase price, it's the loan amount. They're going to take a 30-year mortgage, so we made that 30, and then their interest rate is 7%. Okay, so make sure you put that in. Practice while you watch the video so you can make sure you're getting the same things I'm getting. Then we're going to click calculate. Right here, you can see what the payment is. $1,408.11. So let's put that down. The payment is $1,408.11. Okay, so that's what they would be paying every month for that loan. Now, something we don't really get into in this section or this course is, but I do want to just say, because I feel like it's something you really, just some knowledge I want to make sure you understand. This is just the payment for the loan. When you have a mortgage, you also have property taxes and home insurance that you pay. And you can pay that, there's a couple ways to pay it. You can pay it per month or by the year, but either way, it does add to that payment. So their payment wouldn't just be this amount. It would also be the amount that they're paying on average per month for the property taxes and their home insurance. So I just wanted to make sure you understood that there is more to just the loan that you're paying. You have other payments that go to the house. All right, so let's go down here. Patricia and Marshall purchased the house. Okay, so they purchased it. And with all that information you see there, they also paid the 2 points at their closing. And their monthly principal is, we just found that out, so let me write that down, was $1,408.11. There we go. Recall that points are considered prepaid interest. Determine the total amount, including principal, interest, down payment, and points that they will pay for their house over the 30 years. Okay, this is kind of multiple things in here that we're going to calculate to figure out how much, what it's asking is, at the end of 30 years, how much in total did they pay out of pocket for this house? And I know you're not going to like this answer, but it's knowledge we must know. They are making, so I'm going to start off with a couple things. So this is really going to be a few steps. One, we know that they are paying $1,408.11, right? Every month. So that's 12 payments a year for 30 years. That's 360 payments. For just the loan, This is saying they didn't make any extra payments over those 30 years. They just paid this. How much are they paying back? They're paying back $506,000, $919 with 60 cents. So $506,919.60. This is how much they're paying back just for the loan. But we have a few steps here. So now I'm going to go to step 2. Because remember, they also had a down payment. So I'm going to put that in words here. Now add the down payment plus the points. Okay? Because they also paid that out of pocket. So we have the amount they paid back for the loan plus the down payment. The down payment was $37,350. And then they had the points, which was $4,233. All together for this house, that looks like a 9, so sorry, $548,502.60. This is what they are paying back. So they bought the house for $249,000. What they paid back is a little over $548,000. And unfortunately, this is reality with a lot of mortgages. Obviously, with a 15-year mortgage, you will pay a lot less back in interest, but not everybody can afford the 15-year mortgage. What also is dependent on how much you pay back, especially in interest, is also looking at the interest rate. When interest rates are high, you will be paying back more in interest. When interest rates are low, you'll pay back less in interest in comparison. How much of the cost, so now we're answering another question. How much of the cost in Part A was in interest? Now, when we're looking at this, we're only looking at how much they paid back. So when we're talking about interest, we're only looking at what they paid back for the loan, not the total that we looked at in the green in step 2 of the previous problem. We only need the amount from step 1. How much they paid back for the loan, because that's where we'll figure out how much they paid back in interest. And then we have to subtract what they had a loan for. Not what they purchased the house for, but what they borrowed. So that was the $211,000, that part. Altogether in interest, they paid $295,269.60. So this is what they paid back in interest. And I know they paid back more in interest than they paid for the house even. I know we don't like to know this information, but you have to know it. I don't like to think about it with my house, but I understand it. And it is what it is. All right, here's another question. How much of the first payment is applied to principal? Think about the first payment. The first payment was the $1,408.11. How much of that payment went to the principal? Here's something just to kind of explain, and I'm going to make myself a little more room here. When we're looking at a payment, just 1 month of payment, believe it or not, that is actually simple interest. I equals PRT. So when we're looking at interest and principal of your first payment, we're actually looking at the simple interest formula. So now we're going back to probably, I think it was the 2nd or 3rd video that we did. All right, so let's look at that. We have the principal. What is the principal? Well, it's the very first month payment, right? Which means the principal is the loan amount because you haven't made a payment yet. So we haven't done anything to the principal yet. So it's the amount that you borrowed. Remember the interest rate was 7%, so that's 0.07. Ooh, and what is time? This is your first payment of 12 payments, meaning 1 out of 12 payments. So your time is 1/12. It's the first month's payment out of 12. Now on your calculator, again, we've talked about this. If you're using a basic calculator, take 1 divided by 12 first, get that answer, then multiply it by the interest and then by the loan amount. What this is going to give us, and we're going to round to the nearest dollar, is how much, let me just write this down first. I'm seeing $1,234.63. This is how much, okay, now let's go back. How much of the first payment, let me write down the first payment here. Remember that your payment every month is $1,408.11. So with that payment, the very first payment, over $1,200 of that payment went to just interest. And that is, unfortunately, that's just how it works. The first several payments goes mostly to interest, very little to the principal, and then over time it will start to reverse. We actually haven't answered the question yet because it says how much of the first payment went to the principal. Well, I'm just going to go here. I already wrote this part down. So subtract the interest. What's left over of that payment is how much went to the principal, which is $173.48. So of the $1,400 payment, just over $173 of that payment went to the principal. Now, we have one more problem, and this is an affordability problem, meaning we're going to kind of work the other way around. You know what you can afford. Now we have to figure out how much of a house you can afford. And I use different calculators online for this. There's lots of calculators for this to help you because this is also something important to know. If you already know in advance what you can afford, use some of these calculators just to help you get an idea of then how much of a house you can buy. Now, if you're looking for a bank loan, they will also tell you how much they can lend you, and that also will tell you how much you can afford. So you can afford monthly payments of $2,000. If current mortgage rates are 6% for a 15-year fixed rate loan, how much can you afford to borrow? If you are required to make a 20% down payment and you have the cash on hand to do that, how expensive of a home can you afford? So a two-part question. What we're going to do is we're going to go to this website that I have here. And these notes are in your course, so you can always click on this in your course. But we're going to go ahead and let me just click on it, see if it opens. There we go. I liked this one because it doesn't make you have to fill out your email. Some of these calculators link you to somebody, and so I don't like to use those, especially for class. But let's go ahead. So what this is showing, okay, there's a video that pops up. I just noticed, so I closed that one. What can you afford? All right, I can afford to pay $2,000. That's what the problem says, $2,000 a month. My loan term, I'm going to change it to year. So notice what I just did here. It says I can afford to pay $2,000 a month. This is the particular problem for 15 years. So change it to years. If you're on this website, you have a choice of months or years. And then what is your interest rate? In this particular problem, the interest rate is 6. Now I will click calculate. All right, notice down here, it tells you right here how much of a loan you can afford. So $237,007.03. Oops, went to our other site from the previous one. So it said we can do 200, and I'm just going to round to the nearest dollar. Okay, so if you go back up here, I'm just going to round. I'm not going to worry about the 3 cents. So I'm just going to round to $237,000.07. Okay, so going back to that, this is the loan amount, not the house we can afford. That's just saying how much we can afford to borrow. The next question, or the next part of this problem said, if you can put, and let me just underline it right here, 20% down, how much of a home can you afford? So this is how much your loan can be, but how much of a home can we do? So if you put down, and I'm going to write this out just to kind of show what I'm trying to say. If you can put down 20%, then you are financing 80%, right? Think about that. You're going to put down 20% out of 100%. That means what you're financing is going to be 80% of that. So how would I figure out how much we can buy of a house? Take how much you can borrow. Oops, well, that wasn't good. Let me undo that. There we go. The $7. And we're going to divide that by 80% or 0.80 because we're doing the algebra with that. So think of, you're going to do the opposite. If you're going to put down 20%, then what you need to do here is you're going to finance 80%, which means I'm going to take my loan amount divided by 80%. That's going to tell me how much of a house you can afford, which is roughly $297,000. So that's the two-part question. This is your loan amount, and then this would be how much you could buy of a house. Okay, so that ends our section on mortgages. We have one section left, and that will be all about credit cards.